Hey, it's been a few days since I've seen 28 Years Later, and I don't know if I really liked the film. I know I liked some of it, and there's definitely parts that I didn't like in the film, and that could have been influenced by the people leaving the theater while we were watching it. Let's talk about that. Picking up nearly 3 decades after a devastating, rage-inducing virus decimated London, 28 years later plunges audiences back into the world still grappling with the remnants of England's downfall, where a father and his son, 12-year-old Spike, heads into the mainland so that he can get his first infected kill. Hey everybody, it's Dave here from Nerdbox, and thank you for joining me again for another video on the channel. I know it's been a little while since I've done a review on a film, but this one warrants it. Now, I'm sure like you and maybe other reviews that you've watched, 28 Years Later was a highly anticipated film this year for me when it came to horror movies. And for Marcus on the channel, he was thinking that this was going to be the biggest horror film of the year. After seeing it, I'm going to tell you it's probably going to be the biggest divisive film of the year, where you're going to have people that are going to love this movie, you're going to have people that are going to absolutely hate this movie. There's not going to be an in-between. So you're either going to love it, you're going to hate it, and we're going to talk about why. Now, Danny Boyle and Alex Garland have returned to the 28 Days Later franchise to bring us the long-awaited sequel to 28 Weeks Later. And, well, let me just say, if this was always the original plan for the third part, then I can see why it's taken so long to go ahead and make the film, because this felt more like an art project or them kind of putting their foot down to say, hey, look, this isn't a zombie film. Stop comparing us to a zombie film. This is a virus film. So when you see reviews like here from Corey Leach talking about how the undead has returned with 28 Days Later, it no longer is valid when you watch this film. In fact, 28 years later, it doesn't feel like it's a part of the same franchise as the previous two films. And as we're watching the movie and we'll learn, 28 Weeks Later seems to be retconned from the franchise. Now, I can understand why it's not as strong as 28 Days Later, but we were definitely left with some unanswered questions in 28 Weeks Later that we're not going to get any resolution for. So going into the film, know that ahead of time. Even though it's going to be very confusing, because this film feels like it's three different stories that are just crashed into each other. A coming-of-age survival tale, a mother and son road trip back into the mainland, and a religious apocalyptic epic. And this is all pieced together with B-roll, frantic montage sequences that makes it seem like we're watching something out of Rob Zombie's House of a Thousand Corpses. Now, talking about 28 Weeks Later and why it's confusing even though it's retconned out of this, they use clips of that film along with clips from a film from 1930s or 1940s playing along to the poem Boots, which we heard and saw in the trailer. Now, that was one of the things that got me really hyped for this movie, was hearing that poem. But when I did some looking into what the poem actually means, so Boots was a poem about the British infantry invading Africa over resources that were available on that land. So think of the gold rush, where the government said, hey, you know what? We want some of that, and so now we're going to get our troops involved into getting us those resources that we need. So I don't know if Boots and the B-roll footage that they use, along with it being spliced with 28 Weeks Later, was kind of maybe, hey, we're making a political statement, because I've talked about it here before, where I really just don't like seeing people cram politics into movies that it shouldn't belong in. And now, while horror has always done that in the past, where it's always been sensitive to the things that are going on in our culture and our current climate with politics, it didn't fit here, and it didn't fit as part of the storytelling. While it may seem cool to hear part of the poem in the beginning of it, after a while it was like, where are we going with this? Because it doesn't really hold the story together. And this isn't the first time that they had sequential clips that were popped in there that just kind of take you out of the film and the story that's being told. As Jamie, the father of Spike, and the two of them are going through the mainland looking for kills for him to be christened into adulthood, we see other clips that are thrown in there where we're getting a little bit of a backstory of the evolution of the infected as they come across carcasses of animals and stuff like that, or warning signs that they're coming across. And that was just done very poorly because, as I mentioned, House of a Thousand Corpses had those weird, like, MTV style cuts. It did here too, and I think we're just like 20 years too late to throw these type of clips in there where we're seeing the infected hunting at night in like this red filter and their eyes glowing. And it's kind of cool, but if we think about it, how it relates to the film, where we don't have like night vision goggles, and I don't need that part of the story explained to me. So that kind of took me out a little bit. Like, maybe seeing it once would have been okay, but when you're constantly doing it in the first act of the film, it just gets to be a little bit jarring after a while. And there's going to be some scenes that you're going to see that are going to throw you completely out of it, and you have to remember, this is not a zombie film. This is a film about a virus infecting people. And we're getting to see a 28-year later evolution of what that virus is. Because remember, we just went through a pandemic, and the virus has different strains that eventually mutate, and that happens throughout this film, where you see the different mutations of the virus on people. It almost reminds me of Left 4 Dead, but done very poorly. Like, you have these different types of characters that you're encountering along the way in the video game, but they're the same render used over and over again. And that's what happens in this film as well. Is 28 years later, while they explain, sort of, the different types of infected that are out there, they don't look different. They all look like the same game render that we would expect in the video game. So we have these fatty roamers, and then we have the alpha, and they look the same. And let me tell you, the alphas in this one, fully nude, and there's a lot of penis in this movie, so that may take you out depending on how you are comfortable with that type of stuff. Now, that first act was very good. I enjoyed seeing Aaron Taylor Johnson playing the father Jamie, and then there was Spike, the son, played by Alfred Williams, who did a fantastic job in this movie. When they return back to the mainland after they accomplish what they set out to do, we get to see how that culture has changed. And almost like, think of a bar mitzvah for somebody turning 13 in the Jewish faith. Here, there's a party for this person going out there, or this kid going out there, killing an infected. It was nice seeing that being played out. And then after that, you kind of like wondering, it's like, okay, so what's going to happen next? Are we going to see the infected come and attack where they're living? Are they going to go back out there? And that's where we go into the second act of the film, where it's mother and son going into the mainland in search of a doctor. And the story changes from that point on, where it kind of starts to drag. And it's at this point in the second act, before we get to the third act, where I started hearing a lot of people saying, what the hell am I watching? Because this is where the tone of the film changes, is with that second act and that journey. And by the time we reach the final act, I have to say, wow. That's all I could say is, what the fuck just happened? People actually got up and left. There was 3 people that left my theater. But getting into the third act, and in the final 10 minutes of this film, we get our third take, or a third style of this movie, and it's just like, when the hell did the Power Rangers show up? And you'll understand this when you see the last 10 minutes of the film, because it's just completely different from everything else that happened in the movie. Now, some people are really going to love this, and others are going to really hate it, or are going to be just completely confused by it. But if you end up leaving this film, you gotta find the ending and watch the ending, because it's just like, what the fuck just happened? Even the style of the last 10 minutes does not fit the whole entire beginning half of the movie in the first 2 acts. And it's just kind of, wow. You went there to be different, and you didn't need to go there, and that's going to probably cause a lot of people to kind of hate this film. Now, for me personally, I love the premise of the story. The premise is fantastic. Seeing the evolution of the virus makes sense to me. The opening of the film, with everybody being isolated to this small little island and having to venture out there to become a man as a teenager, all makes sense. But then as you change the story with the second act and then with that crazy ass ending, it's like, yeah, I don't know where I stand with the film. And honestly, I left the movie theater trying to figure out if I liked or hated it. And I still can't say where I stand on that right now. So I'm actually going to give this 3 out of 5 stars because, again, the premise is good. There's some very good unaliving moments that happens in this film. There's some very good character development on it. It just kind of falls apart throughout the entire movie. And this is something that maybe in a year from now or 5 years from now is going to be one of those films where you're watching and it's like, damn, they were ahead of their time. I really enjoyed this movie. It's just right now, I'm not there yet. So I don't know if I would go and see this again in the theaters. And I don't know if I would rush to see this once it comes back to streaming, just so I can understand where he was going with this film. But maybe, this is all leading up to something bigger in the next 2 films. Now, we've all learned over the last several years how tiring it is to watch a film that is just merely there to set up other films from happening. And now we're getting this in the 28 Years Later franchise. So I will go see the next film. This hasn't kind of discouraged me from seeing what's happening next. It's not that bad of a film. But if the next film is like this, I'm going to be like, I don't know. I don't know if I would go and finish the entire trilogy then. I probably will, because I did see that with Halloween and Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends. But I'm hoping that this does not go off the rails like that franchise did in its reboot. Because, yeah, right now, it's not set up to be really good. It's not set up to be really good. Now, did you go and see 28 Years Later? Let me know by dropping that down in the comments. What did you think of it? Were you one of the people that really love it? Were you one of the people that were on the other side of the fence where you really hate it? Or are you going to be one of those horror fans that are out there that are like, hey, well, you just didn't understand it? Hey, Nerdbox's community has always been about, hey, you love what you love. There's very different flavors of horror out there, and nobody really gets on anybody's case about that. So thank you for that. Now, again, drop a like on this video. Share what you think about the film. Tune in this weekend when we talk about the film live on the Howling Hour. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, please do. That helps us a great deal, more than you actually think. And you don't have to have your notifications on for our videos as they pop up, because we'll always be there in the subscription feed. But every like, comment, and subscription helps us a great deal. Anyway, until the next one, see ya.